And I have that we do have a quorum of 6 at this point, so we can go ahead and call the meeting to order. We do have, I think, another member who is going to join us.
Till 7?
What's up?
I got a meeting at 6:30.
Okay, so we're starting at this the San Bernardino County Committee on School District Organization virtual meeting. Today is 6 o'clock in the evening, Wednesday, December 7th. Our acting secretary, can you call the roll call?
Yes, a member Cadman. I think you're still on mute.
Hi.
Member Cadman, member Bennett,
Aye.
member Munoz,
Present.
member Martinez. I don't see Flora. Member Willingham,
Here.
member Lopez,
Here.
Chairman Trujillo,
Here,
and I don't see member Flora. Martinez is just joining. And welcome, Flora. We just heard your attendance. And I don't see member Gongora yet, but we do have a quorum.
thank you. So at this time, we're going to do the flag salute. So if everyone can stand. Ms. Cadman, would you like to lead us to the flag salute?
Sure. Am I off mute?
Yes.
Yes.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That takes us to number 3, which is the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move that we adopt tonight's agenda.
A second.
So it's moved by,
I had member
Seconded by-
Munoz
there we go.
Okay.
and member Willingham made the second.
Great.
And if it's all right, I'll go ahead and do the
Do the
roll
roll call.
call. Member Cadman.
Aye. Here.
Me-
Aye.
member- Yeah, yeah, member Bennett,
Oh,
okay, I think he just came back on. Member Munoz,
Aye.
member Martinez.
Aye.
Member Willingham,
Aye.
member Lopez,
Aye.
Chairman Trujillo.
Aye.
And the motion carries. See, I have 1, 2, 5, 6, 7-0. Is that correct, Audrey? Okay. And then as part of the meeting notice, Mr. Chairman, may I read a statement off the agenda for the
Yes.
benefit of the public?
Thank you.
Dennis, sorry to interrupt. Kareem just logged in.
Oh, Kareem, okay. And we'll note his attendance at 6:06. And the notice is this, that on November 16th, 2022, the San Bernardino County Committee on School District Organization approved conducting regular and special meetings under the provisions of AB 361. The special meeting at 6 p.m. tonight, December 7th, will be held as a virtual meeting with public participation by phone. If you wish to participate in the meeting and or make public comment on an item on the agenda, please follow the instructions below. For the agenda and attachments may be found at www.sbcss.k12.ca.us. When on the website, go to the middle blue bar and click on the Governance County Committee agendas/meetings, and you can call up the materials for this evening's meeting. A special board meeting shall provide an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the legislative body concerning any item that has been described in the notice for the meeting. For members of the public who would like to make public comment in writing, please email your written comments not to exceed 300 words to county.committee@sbcss.net by 6 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Comments will be read into the record. For members of the public who would like to make public comments by phone, use access code number 1-669-900-9128 with the access code 983-6214-0604. When asked to speak, use *6 to unmute yourself. Follow the directions as a participant. Attendee ID is not needed. To listen to the meeting, the access number is 1-669-900-9128. The meeting ID is 983-6214-0604. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we can go into public comments.
So we're on number 4, if there's any general public comments.
Okay, we do
Secretary.
have some callers, I believe, but Audrey, did we receive any emails to the address that we announced earlier this evening?
No, we have not received any emails.
So we have no emails for public comments or the public hearing. But we do have a number of speakers, and I would acknowledge that we did get a letter from the Colton Joint Unified School District. I'm not sure when that letter will be presented. I'm assuming during the public hearing. The superintendent is online and can speak to that matter when appropriate. So for members of the public, we have several callers on the line. So I'm just going to go by the numbers that I see. The caller with the phone number ending in 8803. You unmute yourself, and do you wish to address the committee at this time, or do you wish to address the committee at the public hearing?
Yes, hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Can you identify yourself, please?
Yes, hi. I'm Dr. Omar Jarudi. I'm one of the residents currently living on Price Drive in Loma Linda. And I just like to voice my support for the proposition in trying to get the school district lines changed from Colton Unified School District, as you know, the current lines currently put our neighborhood within the Colton Unified School District, as opposed to the Redlands Unified School District. And you know, I completely support the proposition that would put every resident, all the current Loma Linda residents within the Redlands School District instead, due to the significant disparity in education. And the fact that, you know, I think that everybody in Loma Linda should be able to attend Redlands, not just for, you know, proximity reasons, but also, you know, due to the fact that more, you know, better programs, and the fact that, you know, not to sound extremely biased, but I went to a Redlands school myself, so I could definitely attest to the, you know, difference in education between students that I've seen that attend Colton districts versus Redlands districts.
Thank you for your comment. I'll move next to the caller with the phone number ending in 8034. Would you identify yourself, please? And you have 3 minutes. I'm caller 8803, the last four digits. You are still, I believe, are you on the line or?
Oh, I unmuted and then I muted myself again.
Okay. Could you identify yourself and then you have 3 minutes, please?
Oh, I already spoke before.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
And so then I was looking at the phone number ending in 8034. I'm sorry. I'm just seeing phone numbers. I'm not seeing names on the screen here. 8034, would you come online and identify yourself, please? Last four digits of the phone number, 8034.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Could you
Okay,
identify?
sorry. Yes, my name is Raj. I also live in the same community, Laurel Heights community. I could not say it better than what doctor said, the person before me, that we would like to be out of Colton School District and be under the new school district. So, yeah, all I want to say is whatever the doc said, that's what same thing I would like to repeat.
Okay.
So please take that as my word,
Thank you. I'll move to the next individual. It's the phone number. Last four digits are 4726. The caller, if you would unmute and identify yourself. Last four digits, 4726.
Yeah, to unmute, one has to press *6.
Yes. Okay. For the individual of the last four digits ending in 4726, if you would hit *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, we'll come back to that individual. The next caller that I have, the last four digits are 5671. If you would hit *6 to unmute yourself. I'm not hearing. So would, again, the last four digits of the phone number ending in 5671. Would you hit *6 to unmute yourself? Okay. I've not heard responses, Mr. Chairman, from the last two callers. They could be just listening. There is another opportunity for members of the public to address the committee on this matter during the public hearing.
Thank you. We are moving on to number 5, procedures for territory transfer initiated by the local agency. Would you like to lead us in that item?
Yes, I'll speak to that. And I thought it would be helpful for the benefit of the county committee and for the public to give a few general comments concerning the county committee and about the process and the procedures to be used by the county committee in tonight's special meeting. And again, it is a special meeting, so it's a single topic meeting, and this is the topic regarding the petition submission by the city of Loma Linda. There are 4 basic types of actions to reorganize school districts. First one would be action to form a new school district. Secondly, it could be a unification of a certain school districts. Third, it could be a lapsation of a school district when it falls below a certain size, typically just 5 or 6 students. And the last is action to transfer territory. And it's this last item that is before the committee this evening. This type of reorganization that the county committee has before it this evening is a petition to transfer territory from one school district to another. In this case, it's from Colton Joint Unified to Redlands Unified. County committees on school district organization have the responsibility for considering proposals to change the organization of one or more school districts, including petitions for territory transfers between 2 or more school districts. So about the current petition, in a moment, you will hear a presentation by School Services of California that provides an analysis of the petition from the city of Loma Linda to transfer the territory from certain territory of Colton Joint Unified to Redlands Unified School District. This is the subject of tonight's hearing as well. At the heart of the analysis are 9 statutory criteria that govern the school district reorganizations, including transferring territory from one district to another. For any territory transfer, the county committee must determine whether the 9 statutory items have been substantially met prior to rendering a final decision. The petition under consideration requesting the transfer came from a local agency, in this case, the city of Loma Linda. It was initiated by a resolution by the city council. This type of petition is rare, and the steps to be used by the county committee are different than the more common type of petition initiated by a citizens group. One of the differences is that additional preliminary work must be done, one of which is to conduct an initial public hearing. More specifically, the Education Code provides on receipt of a resolution approved by a majority of the members of the City Council, as was the case here, that the County Committee has to hold a public hearing on the proposal at a regular or special meeting. The Education Code also provides that following this public hearing, the County Committee must grant or deny the petition. I'm going to explain and expand on that in just a little bit. Accordingly, the purpose of this hearing is to receive comments and for the county committee to either grant or deny the petition as provided in the Education Code. If the petition is denied by the committee, the petition goes no further. If the petition is granted, the process moves forward and the county committee must adopt a tentative recommendation and hold 1 or more additional public hearings in the area proposed for the transfer before the committee can consider and take final action on the petition. So let me be clear, it is if the petition is granted after today's hearing, then there are additional steps that must be taken at future meetings or hearings before the final county committee decision can be rendered and made. If the petition is granted and a tentative recommendation is made, among other things, additional hearings will be required and the county committee will have to review each of the 9 statutory criteria. The committee will have to make a determination whether each of the criteria has been substantially met. Even after the committee makes the final decision, the decision by the county committee can be appealed to the State Board of Education. Additionally, and ultimately, the final approval most likely will have to go to a vote of local election. I noted earlier that if the petition is granted at this stage after tonight's meeting, the process will move forward and additional steps must be taken, including holding 1 or more public hearings in the proposed area for transfer. This past September, I drove around the area of the proposed transfer, and I would describe the area as mostly hilly and mostly residential. Besides homes, there are a large apartment complex, mobile home park, a cemetery, and a very small area of light industrial use. I did not find any public facilities in the area. So should the matter move forward, including having to hold a public hearing in the affected area, we may need the assistance of the city of Loma Linda in finding a suitable location for this purpose. With that, let's see, did I skip over something? But I do also need to repeat that an earlier statement that if the petition is denied tonight, it goes no further. So with that, I want to thank Brianna Garcia and Matt Phillips with School Services of California for the depth and breadth of their feasibility study. And that was distributed to all parties involved as soon as it was available. The study is available to the public on the county committee's webpage. And I also want to acknowledge Scott Ferguson as bond counsel with Jones Hall, who provided an analysis of one component of the report that was rather complex. All 3 are available to answer questions at the conclusion of the presentation. So with that, those questions would be coming from the county committee. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we are ready to move on to item number 6.
Thank you. Item number 6 is a reorganization feasible study. And it's with both Colton Joint Unified School District and the Redlands Unified School District. And there's a presentation with Brianna Garcia and Matt Phillips with the School Services of California. They'll present the findings of the reorganization feasibility study with analysis of the state's 9 criteria.
Thank you, Chairperson Trujillo and County Committee. We appreciate you taking the time this evening. I am going to share screen so that you can see the presentation. There we go. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Excellent. So my name is Brianna Garcia. I'm with School Services of California, and I'm here this evening with my colleague, Matt Phillips. And we're with School Services of California. And as Dennis noted, we completed the study for the 9 criteria that is part of the education code that's required to be looked at for any territory transfers. So the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools contracted with us in order to look at this reorganization feasibility study on the proposed territory transfer. The transfer is with regards to, as Dennis noted, the Laurel Heights neighborhood, which is physically located within the city of Loma Linda, but is within the boundaries of the Colton Joint Unified School District. It includes approximately 44 students, 14 of which are already enrolled within the Redlands Unified School District. The proposed territory transfer was initiated by the City of Loma Linda City Council via a resolution back in December of 2020, and it requested that the neighborhood that's within their city boundaries, but within the Colton Joint Unified School District's boundaries, be transferred from Colton Joint Unified to Redlands Unified. The current law requires that the county committee consider whether the 9 criteria has been met. As Dennis noted, this is really the first part of this process. And if you determine that the committee, or excuse me, that the petition is granted, then you'll be moving forward. And that's when the education code really does look at the 9 criteria. But staff felt that it was important in order for you to make an informed decision that you had this information before you this evening. This slide just shows you the list of the 9 criteria, but over the next 2 slides, I'll give you a brief synopsis of each one of these. So the first criteria requests that the territory transfer, that the reorganized districts after the transfer have an adequate number of pupils. And so we will go into detail on each one of these. The second criteria requires that the districts are organized on the basis of substantial community identity. The third looks at the equitable division of property and facilities and wants to ensure that there is an equitable division between the districts that are part of any reorganization. The fourth criteria looks at discrimination and segregation. It wants to ensure that each district's ability to educate students in an integrated environment is maintained, and that their reorganization doesn't promote any racial or ethnic discrimination or segregation. Criteria number 5 wants to ensure that there are no additional increased costs to the state as a result of the reorganization. Criteria number 6 is a sound educational program. It wants to ensure that any reorganization will continue to promote a sound educational performance for students and won't significantly disrupt the educational programs of the affected districts and the students that are attending those districts. Criteria 7 is looking at a substantial increase in costs for school facilities costs. And so if, as a result of the proposed reorganization, there would be a cost incurred for the construction, remodelization, et cetera, of facilities in either school district. Criteria number 8 is looking at increased property values and wants to ensure that that is not the reason why the reorganization has been put forth, simply to increase property values in a given district. And lastly, is the effective fiscal status and management. It really wants to ensure that as a result of the reorganization, both school districts will remain financially and fiscally solvent, and that the reorganization wouldn't cause a substantial negative impact on the fiscal status of either of the districts. And so to be clear, all of these, both districts right now are at what we might call a status quo. And what we're really looking at as we walk through these 9 criteria is that what happens to the districts as a result of the reorganization. And so we want to look at that after effect, at that hypothetical after effect, after the reorganization was to happen. So based on our review of these 9 criteria, we did find that all 9 criteria have been substantially met. The 2 options that the Education Code provides is substantially met or not met. And so looking at all of these, and we're going to walk through them, we do believe that all 9 criteria have been substantially met. And so with that, I will start with the first one, an adequate number of pupils. As I noted, we do find that this was substantially met. The current enrollment of both school districts, both Coatland Joint Unified and Redlands Unified, is well above the 1,501 pupils that's required by the Education Code. So both school districts right now are at roughly 20,000 students. They are both dealing with some slight decline in enrollment, but they are well above the 1,501 student threshold, and that would not change as a result of the reorganization, given that we're looking at approximately 44 students that would be moving from one school district to the other. Criteria number 2 looks at the community identity and wants to ensure that the new districts, whatever the reorganized district might be, are built on and around an established community. So there is an existing community identity within the city of Loma Linda, and it already encompasses the residents of this proposed territory transfer, since this area is already within the city boundaries of the city of Loma Linda. The majority of the city of Loma Linda is already within the boundaries of the Redlands Unified School District. In fact, approximately 2,613 of Loma Linda's school-age children are already attending Redlands USD, representing about 13.1% of the Redlands current student body. And so we do believe, because of that, that there is community identity that has been built around this community. If you also look at the map on your screen, to the southwest area is a memorial and mortuary site. Just to the northwest, it really is mostly industrial property. And so really the connection of this community is with the residential community and commercial community that is to the east, which is part of the city of Loma Linda already. Number 3 is the equitable division of property and facilities. And so we looked at the division of property. As Dennis noted, there are no public facilities or no facilities owned by either school district located within this area. And so there would be no division of property that would have to change hands. With regards to the division of debt, again, this area contains no public school properties or buildings. And so the proposed territory would cease to be liable for any outstanding bond indebtedness of Coatland Joint USD and automatically assume its proportionate share of the Redlands USD bond indebtedness. The code also states that in those cases, the amount of the assessed value that would be lost by one and gained by the other district can't be more than a certain percentage. And in this case, we're looking at less than 2% of the bonded indebtedness that would remain with the Coatland Joint Unified School District. And so we believe for these 2 items that there is not a concern with regards to the reorganization. The one area that there was some concern, and as Dennis noted, this is an area where the attorney, Mr. Ferguson from Jones Hall, did some additional research to look at this area, is the Community Facilities District. A community facilities district is created usually by a local entity, in this case, the school district, in order to fund improvements within their area. In this case, the CFD was created back in 2001 for the construction, purchase, modification, expansion, improvement, or rehabilitation of school facilities. Again, though there are no school facilities within this area, these monies were used to improve facilities within the Colton Joint Unified, presumably schools where these students within this area were attending. Current law does not provide any guidance for the transfer or division of the CFD among school districts. There is nothing in regulations or precedent. And what Jones Hall provided that was an appendix to the report that you received was a memo that does provide the legal background and describes a number of complex but feasible avenues for the continued administration of the CFD following the proposed territory transfer. And so while there is no legal precedent or information within the regulations with regard to splitting the CFD, Jones Hall has provided some examples of ways that there's the possibility for the CFD to continue if the reorganization were to move forward. And for that reason, we believe that this criteria has been substantially met, though we do caution and recommend that if these territory transfer is granted and it does move forward, both school districts will need to consult with council and determine what would happen next with that CFD. This is not something that the county committee can take on or determine, or that the county superintendent can do. It's something that will have to be worked at and looked through by the two school districts with bond counsel moving forward. Criteria number 4 is with regards to discrimination and segregation. Again, we found that it has been substantially met. The proposed territory transfer is not going to promote any racial or ethnic discrimination or segregation. This chart shows you, based on the 21-22 enrollment data, what the racial and ethnic makeup of both school districts. And as you can see, both have a mix of students, and Hispanic or Latino is the largest proportion of both school districts. Because we're talking about approximately 44 students, the change after the reorganization would not be significant in order to shift these numbers where it would cause any type of racial or ethnic discrimination or segregation. And Matt is going to walk you through the increase in state costs.
Thanks, Brianna. Good evening, committee members. There's 2 criterion relative to state costs. This particular one we have really isolated to state costs relative to operational costs, whereas number 7, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about state costs relative to facilities. For finding number 5, no increase in state costs. As Brianna mentioned before, we found that all the criterion were substantially met, this being one of those. And the focus of this one in the analysis was relative to the local control funding formula, which is the primary way that the state provides operational funding to school districts in the state of California. It's a model that was brought into play in the 2013-14 year. And without getting too far into the weeds, there's really 2 components of this formula. The first part of the formula is a base grant, which means that a student, whether in Colton or Redlands or up in Del Norte County, the state would provide the same amount of funding to each of those districts, irrespective of where the student attended. So didn't spend any time talking about the base grant piece. An area where there could be some fluctuation in state funding where, conceivably this criterion would not be met is on the supplemental and concentration part of the formula. And what the state has done is it's set up this equity component that recognizes the demographics of students in a school district. And based on the percentage of students that are either identified as eligible for free or reduced price meals, eligible for English language learner services, or foster youth, the state provides additional funding for each one of those students. And where a discrepancy really could occur is If the transfer of territory was happening between a low UPP district, meaning it has very few numbers of students identified, and a high UPP district, that is not the case here. Redlands, as noted in the chart, about 7 out of every 10 students are identified in one of those 3 categories. And in Colton, about 8, a little more than 8 out of every 10 students are identified in one of those 3 categories. And why that's important is because the state provides additional funding, the concentration grant. Once a school district surpasses 55%, or 55 out of every 100 students, they provide this additional funding. The transfer of the students, especially when we think about the small number of students in question here, which is 44 total, 30 who are currently, at the time of the data collection, were attending Colton schools. Both districts would still be eligible for the concentration grant for those students. And so from the state's perspective, it would really just be a shifting of the funds from Colton to Redlands, not necessarily an increase in state costs overall. So back to you, Brianna, for criteria number 6.
Thank you, Matt. Criteria 6 is looking at a sound educational program, and we don't believe that the transfer of the territory would significantly disrupt the educational programs at either district, nor would it impact the educational performance of the students within the territory transfer. And we looked at a couple of different things when we were trying to determine whether or not this would be the case. The state utilizes the California School Dashboard for measuring student outcomes. It is a system that looks at multiple measures. So before, we used to have a system that just looked at test scores and said, here is the test score for each district, and you would compare the districts in that respect. What the state has done now is looking at multiple measures. And so it's not just looking at test scores, but looking at the educational environment of the students. So it looks at suspension rates, at graduation rates. It does look at test scores, so it's looking at each one of the measures or indicators that has been identified. It determines a performance level, which is one of these color codes, and tells you whether a district, given the specific indicator, is on the low end, low performance, which would be the red tier, all the way up to the highest end, which is the blue tier. And these color codes are a combination of where a school district is in the given year, as well as the change, whether it's been getting better or worse in a given indicator from the prior year to the current year. In this case, because of the pandemic, the last time the state put out the dashboard with these color codes was in 2019. And so that's the information that we used in order to make this comparison. And so as you can see, again, remembering that the blue is the highest to red at the lowest end. The school districts list here, Colton on the left and Redlands on the right. And we also have the indicators on the left-hand side. And so you can see that for a majority of the indicators, the districts are either roughly the same, or Redlands is slightly higher in their performance indicator. It looks like for Redlands, the performance levels in English language arts and math are higher, and it's making English learners are making greater progress towards meeting English language proficiency in the Redlands school districts versus the Colton Unified School Districts. However, for the 3 climate and engagement indicators, the districts are comparable and are doing the same. And so that gives you one measure of what those differences are between the 2 school districts and whether or not this would be an impact to students. And as this notes, Redlands has slightly better performance in a couple of areas, but otherwise the students moving from Colton Joint Unified to Redlands would not have their educational outcomes negatively impacted because of that potential switch. The other item that we do want to look at are those test scores with regards to the Smarter Balanced Assessment system that is used now. And so this chart shows you the number or the percentage of students that are either meeting standards, exceeding standards, or not meeting standards in both the test scores for English language arts and for math. And once again, what this chart shows you, if you sit there and dig in, is that Redlands is performing slightly better than Colton with regards to the number of students that are exceeding standard, and has fewer students that are not meeting standards, both for English language arts and for math. And so looking at these two, we also looked at the educational offerings that both districts are offering their students, particularly in high school with regards to graduation, electives, et cetera, and found that there are a lot of comparabilities between the two districts. And so based on these two examples and that other information, we do believe that there would not be a detriment to the students from moving from Colton Joint Unified to Redlands Joint Unified. And for that reason, we found this criteria would be substantially met, that the students would not be detrimentally impacted because of, as and a result of the reorganization. Matt, back to you.
Thanks, Brianna. So moving on to number 7, this is really the second phase of determining whether there would be increased state costs relative to a territory transfer. And this particular one, we're looking at the facility side of things. As we've mentioned several times, the group of students is 44, with 14 of the students at the time of data collection already attended Redlands Unified School District schools. So really we're looking at the remaining 30 students. The spread of those 30 students is noted on the table across or I guess technically 14. I have to get used to transitional kindergarten being a grade. Across the 14 grades that are identified on there, you can see the students are spread pretty evenly across, the high water mark being 9th graders. At the time, there was 6 of those, all the way down to 0 5th graders. Let's go to the next slide, please. So based on the spread of the students at the time of the data collection, recognizing that the territory transfer in question, or the territory to be transferred in question, is on the western side of the Redlands Unified School District boundaries. The schools closest to those particular houses, Bryn Mawr for elementary, Cope Middle School, and then the Redlands High School. In conversing with the district as they were providing data, they also, Redlands that is, they also noted that students may be enrolled in Mission Elementary School or Victoria as an alternative to Bryn Mawr. What we have attempted to articulate based on the enrollment and the capacity in each of those schools is that the remaining 30 students would easily be absorbed into any of those schools, even if the other 2 elementary schools weren't options, without the requirement for additional facility costs, especially looking at the state for additional facility costs. Those would not be needed. So therefore, that criteria is substantially met. Next slide, please. Thank you. The 8th criteria is looking at increased property value. The primary purpose of the territory transfer can't be to increase property values. So the evidence that we looked at to support the assertion that this is substantially met, looking at the resolution, there was no reference to property values or increasing of property values. But the resolution did note that the neighborhood of Laurel Heights believed that Redlands Unified would better serve the interests of their children. And also, as noted, that the current boundaries between the 2 districts kind of arbitrarily bisect the city of Loma Linda, with the majority of Loma Linda already being in the Redlands Unified School District. If the territory transfer were to occur, obviously there would be increased property values moving over into the Redlands Unified School District. But going back to the local control funding formula, it wouldn't, the increased property values would not generate more revenue for Redlands Unified School District. They would see a benefit from an increased number of students, which is how the state provides the funding. But when you look at how the state provides funding, it's they apply property taxes first, and then they backfill with state funding. The increased property taxes wouldn't be enough to offset the additional state funding. So there would be no benefit to Redlands by virtue of property taxes if the territory transfer were to occur. So therefore, this criteria substantially met.
I was going to say, Matt, just to be clear, what you meant was there's not going to be an increase in property, or there would be an increase in property taxes, not in value, because it's already within the city of Loma Linda.
Yes, thank you, Brianna. And then the final criterion is looking at the financial impact, the effect of the fiscal status on any districts that are involved. This particular side is looking at it from the perspective of Colton. In the table, I've shown that for the 22-23 year, it's what we call the general fund. It's the general operating fund of the school district. They estimated to have revenues of more than 360 million, with more than 260 million coming in through the local control funding formula. If we're looking at just the remaining students of the 44, those 30 remaining students, if the territory transfer were to occur, as Brianna mentioned earlier, we're looking at the impact of this proposed territory transfer. Those 30 students would go over to Redlands Unified, and it would adversely impact Colton Joint to the tune of about $390,000. Again, assuming that it's about $13,000 per student. When you look at that $390,000 as a percentage of the total general fund revenues just for 22-23, it's a little more than 0.1% of those total general fund revenues. And so based on that, we believe that would have a negligible negative effect on the fiscal status of Colton Joint. You would see the commensurate increase for Redlands Unified School District, which has a commensurately sized general fund. It's in the mid 9 figures as well. So it'd be a negligible positive impact for Redlands Unified School District. And so based on the negligible impact, we found that criteria was substantially met. And then just to bring it home, Brianna spoke to this earlier, but again, just to remind the county, as we went through all 9 of the criteria, we found that each of them was substantially met based on the evidence that we reviewed as part of the study.
And with
So-
that, Dennis, we're available for any questions.
Thank you. And we also have Scott Ferguson online who can answer any questions specific to the CFD. And if I may just take a quick bird walk, I do want to introduce 2 other individuals that are in attendance tonight. Our county superintendent, Ted Alejandro. He's actually the secretary of the county committee, so I wanted to acknowledge and thank him for his attendance. And then I'm serving as the interim acting secretary, but our acting secretary, Angel Arrington, is also part of the meeting. Angel's on the mend, recovering from some health issues, so I've been filling in the interim. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you if there are any questions from members of the committee. I would note that more of the detail of the community facilities information is in the full report. But I'll turn it back to the chairman if there are any questions.
Great. So we're asking if there's any comments or questions regarding the recent feasibility study from the committee members.
Mr. Chair, it's Kareem. I have some questions, if I may.
Go ahead, Kareem.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I really appreciate the brevity in it and kind of the talking points. I know you went through the key criteria, but I have some questions in regards to the CFD. I'm pretty familiar with them and the complexity that it takes kind of to create those, and kind of those being a more long-term approach. So I guess in your research and study, how many years are remaining on the CFD, and what's going to be the process to identify how those funds are separated amongst the agencies, and how much time is that going to take?
I'll let Mr. Ferguson answer the details, but I can tell you that the CFD currently is supposed to run for 30 years, and it started back in 2002. So you're looking 2032-ish before that expires. And as I noted in my presentation, there is currently no avenue through current law to actually split the CFD up and split it between the 2 districts. And so that's the analysis that Mr. Ferguson provided with the possible avenues that the CFD could continue to be administered. And so I'll let Mr. Ferguson take it from there.
Yeah, I think that this is Scott Ferguson at Jones Hall. I think that summarizes our conclusions as well. Any entity forming a CFD is really bound by what's in the statute. And if it's not specifically there, it's very difficult for there to be guidance as to what to do. And this is a very specific situation that has not been addressed yet by the Mello-Roos Act, unfortunately. When we were looking at the bonds, I think the bonds mature in 2034, if I'm remembering correctly. So a couple of years longer, but still, 12 years out from today. And as long as those bonds are outstanding, it's without prepaying them, it's very difficult to wind up this district. It's impossible to wind up the district with bonds outstanding. So if it would be helpful for members of the committee or others, I can walk through at a high level the kind of conclusions and options that we came up with. But it is, again, it is all in the memo, which is attached to the school services report.
Thank you for that response. I guess if I could clarify, I'm concerned about the amount of money it will take to kind of decipher those, since there is no precedence and there is no statute. I'm kind of interested to see how the feasibility study came to the resolve that this criteria that it kind of approved for this criteria, considering there's a little bit of a gray area and confusion around how this will be mitigated. So I guess my question would be, what's that mitigation process going to look like and how long will it take?
I think the reason that we determined that it is met is because there is an avenue. You can prepay the bonds, which would then dissolve the facilities district, and that would no longer be a concern. And so that, for that main reason, and a couple of other examples that Mr. Ferguson included, there are avenues to either the prepayment of the facilities district or the continued administration of the district after a territory transfer. And so it wasn't a situation where nothing could be done. And that's why we thought that it was substantially met, because there is an avenue, though an expensive one, as you noted. But with regards to the time, with regards to paying it off, it really would just depend on, and if the districts had the approximately $3 million to pay it off tomorrow, whatever that legal process is to actually pay it off, that it could happen. The other options, I would leave it up to Mr. Ferguson to determine if he had a hazard, a guess how long it might take for some of the other options that he proposed. Yeah. I will note, though, that even that, I know that territory transfers themselves, reorganizations, those take time. In our report, we use the 23-24 year as a, just an example so we can do our analysis. But facilities reorganizations do, in the last couple that we've worked on, it's probably taken 3 or 4 years before it even, got to the point where it could move forward. So there's definitely a number of years worth where other things will be happening, where this could also be worked on if that determination was made.
And so the prepayment would be made by the agency receiving the funds, or would it be by the agency kind of losing the ADA? To say, I guess, from that standpoint.
I would think.
Or is the suggestion that?
Sorry,
no, I'm saying it's a suggestion that the county committee approved. My apologies. I'm having internet connection, so I apologize if I'm speaking over you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was saying that my assumption is that Colton Joint would be the one paying that amount. And so that would have to be done, I guess, to resolve that CFD. Or is the idea that the county committee makes this approval and then allow the agencies to figure it out? Is that kind of the direction that's kind of being provided?
Yes, that latter is the direction that's being provided. Again, there's nothing in law right now that says how it would work. And so that would be part of the negotiation between the two agencies after the fact.
Okay. So I guess I have a question, if that puts any liability in the county committee, if that doesn't work the way it's intended. And that's not really a question to you, it's more to our legal, I guess, to kind of validate, if this doesn't work out the way it's intended to, what ended up happening at that point.
Well, if that's a question for me, I think it depends on what the form of the challenge is. It's really, it's really uncharted ground here. So I unfortunately don't have a good answer for that.
I can tell you, Mr. Gongora,
Okay.
that with other reorganizations that we've worked on, there are normally a number of issues that still need to be resolved. And so the two districts, not necessarily CFD in the cases I've worked on, but the districts still have negotiations that have to happen after the fact. So it's not unprecedented that a committee would approve a reorganization and that negotiations still have to move forward. A vote still has to happen. There are other steps that have to happen before it's actually final. So.
Oh, thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are all for now.
Thank you. Anyone else want to ask questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Munoz.
So, thank you, Ms. Garcia and Mr. Ferguson and Mr. Phillips for your presentation. I just see a big monkey wrench here with the CFDs. How is it not a financial instrument or asset of the district and considered other property under the language of the California Education Code? It seems like it would fail both the third and the ninth criteria here. And even there's several CBOs on here too. They can chime in too. The community facilities district, the way I see it, is a financial instrument, and if this goes forward, it's probably in the interest of the district, the Colton Joint, to litigate this for years. But my question is is this not a financial instrument or considered an asset of the district?
I'll speak to it from the ninth criteria. And I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds when I say it, but the way that I've taken this and heard the opinions is that the CFD can't be resolved until the bondholders have been repaid. So it's not as if there's funds going to Redlands or Colton is losing the funds that were generated from the CFD. We're really just talking about the resolution of the bondholders at this point and paying off that indebtedness over the final 12 years, it sounds like. And criteria 9 was really more about the general operational revenues of the district. When you look at the $360 million that Colton receives on an annual basis, the students associated with that, which I recognize is not your question, is really insignificant in the grand scheme.
Well, yeah, so if the funding for the CFD stops, it falls on the school district to make that up or pay it off, which they can't.
I would, and maybe Mr. Ferguson can give a quick review of one of the options that that he reviewed, because there is also the potential for the CFD to continue to be administered after a reorganization. And so those monies would continue to still be collected and the bondholders would continue to be paid. That is a possible avenue that could be looked into if this were approved.
Yeah, so to back up a little bit, the way a CFD works is it's more of a liability of Colton Joint Unified rather than an asset. There's obligations that go along with issuing those bonds. They're a debt of the district. They're only payable from the special taxes, but there are covenants to continue to levy and collect those taxes, pay them through the trustee to the bondholders, and also to enforce the special tax lien until the bonds are paid off. So it's really an obligation, and the difficulty, the complication that we identified was, well, if a piece of this CFD gets transferred out of the territorial jurisdiction of Colton Joint Unified, do they still have the legal ability to continue to place those taxes on the roll, collect them through the county, and enforce the lien if there's any delinquencies? And again, this is uncharted water. This is not something that there's any precedent for that I was able to uncover. So the one kind of option that Brianna was mentioning was it may be possible to leave the CFD in place and continue levying. Colton could continue levying and collect those special taxes on property that it's no longer within its boundaries. Again, this would require agreement through all the interested parties, including the county treasurer tax collector, in my opinion, to agree to that. There's nothing in the statute that allows this, so we're kind of outside of what can we point to in the Mello-Roos Act that would allow it. But that would be one avenue, and not without the potential for a successful challenge, because again, there's nothing we can point to that says here's why we're authorized to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We have another question from Robert Bennett from Upland.
These seem like big issues on criteria number 3, the CFD, but on with the term, read it, substantially met, that correct? When you say substantially met.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett, you're going in and out, and so I'm not catching your question.
Oh, I don't know if I have to sign.
We'll come back to you, Robert.
Oh.
We'll come back to you. Does anyone else have a question?
I have a question.
All right, Flora.
Yes. I was wondering, so say the committee passes this and, all the avenues go through this. What is the voting? It says that it would go to the voting for the ballot. Who are the constituents and that this will go to? Would be Loma Linda and like Redlands, or who's the voting? Who's doing the voting?
That's actually something that would need to be decided. The county committee can make a recommendation as to who it believes should be part of that election territory, whether it's one district, the other, or both districts as a whole. So there's nothing in law that says it's just these people. It really is a recommendation by the county committee as to who should be the voting public on this.
Thank you.
Wow, okay. That just opened up other issues. So is there anyone else here that wants to, on the committee, that wants to have a few words or discuss? I have some points of discussion. I was going through the feasibility study, and I was just noticing basically the finance, the demographics seem to line up as the presenters were discussing, but I get that they're comparing both school districts, but is there a specific capture of that particular population that is in the transfer? Or I know that's a side-by-side comparison, but wondering if there was maybe some data captured of just the actual proposed transfer area.
You mean just 44 students that are within that area?
Yes.
Yeah, no, we don't have the exact demographics of just those students, but given both districts are approximately 20,000 students and we're talking about 44, it's a pretty small percentage and really wouldn't move the needle too much, given those numbers.
In terms of property taxes, do you know the value of the territory transfer?
I do. If you'll give me a second, I will. That information was part of criteria 3. I just need to scroll, find it. So hold on. So currently the assessed value of the proposed territory is approximately $96 million as of 21-22.
Okay. That clears up some of the questions I had about what's at stake. Anyone else have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Robert Bennett is back online.
Oh, good. Robert, would like to say a few words or ask a question?
Yes, Raphael, you may have asked it already in this interim because I heard a little bit of the tail end. And that was my concern about the movement of students from Colton to Redlands in regards to ethnicity and the impact that would have, or possible impact that would have. Because I read through here and I see substantially met a lot listed in a lot of terms, and it's always my thoughts about how is that measured, substantially met? What's the definition of substantially met? Because it's throughout the entire, all of the criteria. So that and the other one, as long as the property values are not, because individually property values will increase, but as long as it wasn't the sole purpose, is that correct? That would be okay?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, that was my only other question, was about the racial makeup of those students transferring from Colton to Redlands. And from what we heard earlier in regards comparing Colton and Redlands school districts. So yeah, I'd like to know how is that going to be affect Colton and how will it affect Redlands?
So we looked at, we didn't have the specific demographics for the specific students. Privacy, we didn't get information on any specific student. So what we were looking at was the general demographics of both school districts. And they are, while one has a higher percentage of Hispanic and Latinos, they were both generally proportionately about the same. And both districts are about 20,000 students roughly right now, with some decline in enrollment anticipated. And the number of students that we're looking at is about 44 students. And so I'm not as good as others with doing percentages in my head of the percentage of 44 out of 20,000, but it's a very small and one would argue insignificant number. It would not shift any of those demographics to any extent, given we're looking at 44 out of 20,000 students.
And I wasn't so much looking at the Hispanic culture or section. I was looking at the Caucasian section and moving those from Colton to Redlands. And what does that look like?
Well, I think even if all 44 students in question were Caucasian, we put the whole numbers of students on the slide. Colton has 910, Redlands has 4,600. So I mean, even if all 44 were white, would that create a disparate segregation in the districts? And I think what we're saying is no, because there's only 44, and keep in mind 14 of those 44 are already in Redlands. So we're really talking about 30 students.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you.
And Mr. Bennett, with regards to the question for substantially met, the education code basically says that you're looking at two options, whether a criteria is not met or substantially met. So that's why you see that term. And it does not give a definition for this is what substantially met means. And that's what the analysis is trying to parse out, to look at what the factors are that are looked at behind that, and whether or not based on that information, we feel that it's met or excuse me, not not met or substantially met per the education code.
Okay, great. That clarifies it. Thank you much.
Okay, is there any other committee member who wants to speak?
Mr. Chair, can I ask some more questions?
Yes, Jay.
Okay, so, Mr. Ferguson, I'm going through your memo here. Do you mind walking us through the alternative, the possible other approaches? Yeah, because I forgive me, I'm not a school district person, I'm a finance person, and I know that, well, go ahead. Can you walk us through these?
Sure. So the first one is the one I was discussing a minute ago. Again, untested, but it hinges on the idea that Colton Joint Unified has sold bonds and has made commitments to bondholders to protect the lien of their special taxes. So based on that, it could be possible to allow the CFD to just remain in place and for that piece of it to essentially leave Colton and then be within the territorial boundaries of a neighboring school district. And then for Colton Joint USD to continue to submit the property tax levy as it has been doing to the county. And the county would continue to levy and collect on all of the property, including the units no longer within Colton's territory. And then, of course, the school district would turn around and use those special tax payments to pay the bondholders. This is, as I say, it's untested. It would clear, to my mind, certainly require some kind of an agreement between Colton Joint Unified and Redlands USD for things like administration and importantly, to my mind, foreclosure. One of the only sources of security for a bondholder in this kind of for this kind of a bond is the covenant to foreclose if special taxes are delinquent. And so, and again, I don't know if it's been tested. I don't know what the answer is. Could Colton Joint Unified foreclose on property not within its boundaries, but within the boundaries of a CFD that it had created? It's just an untested question.
So if we can pause there real quick, I wonder what effect that would have on criteria number 9, effect on fiscal status and management. I'm just wondering. But go ahead and then, so the next one you have on here is redeem bonds and dissolve CFD too?
Yes, so we could redeem bonds. And another way to slice this literally would be if a source of prepayment could be found where the parcels that are being transferred, if either voluntarily or through some other source of funding, it could be possible to just prepay the lien on those parcels. You would redeem a portion of the bonds, but then if the special taxes have been prepaid on just those parcels, then they would no longer be levied in a special tax. So that would be, or the bigger one, which is how the memo was written, would be if a source of funding could be found to redeem all of the bonds, and that's at $3.1 million figure. So again, that's costly. Big question mark. Where do these funds come from?
It is costly. I would assume the district, Colton would have to do another general obligation bond, spread the cost out over all their residents, just to pay this off and move on. But okay, and then the next one, and I'm just.
And then the next one, this is also complicated, but to me finds the most support in the statute, the way it's written today, which would be Redlands USD could form a new little CFD on the transfer territory, and then levy a special tax, and then either issue its own bonds and take those proceeds and use them to pay off the Colton CFD number 2 lien, or collect special taxes for the next 12 years, transfer the special taxes that are collected, they'd be sized to be the same dollar amount that the transferred territory owners are paying now. And then Colton would take them, put them in their debt service fund and use them to pay debt service on the bonds for 12 years. Now, the problem with this alternative is that it requires forming a new CFD, having a registered voter vote on the property owners within the transferred territory, in generating a 2/3 the 2/3 approval that you need to pass that vote.
Okay, those were my questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. I'd like to go back again. I keep harping over the $96 million value of the property tax. Wouldn't, again, I'm going back to the financial impact. Yeah, it seems like it was kind of seen as kind of no impact whatsoever. So wanted to ask how you came up with that recommendation for that item, being that it's 96 million.
Well, no, it's not that. So the criteria number 3 asks if there's an ability for the division of property. And so there is no property with regards to school buildings, et cetera, on or within that territory.
Right.
And so go ahead.
Yeah, but you're asking about where we're asking about the value of like the property tax that is being transferred over. Because, you know, although you guys are saying there's no significant kind of impact in the property tax, but you guys mentioned 96 million in property tax.
Understand.
Maybe
So
you guys could clarify that, because maybe I'm just looking at maybe it's just 96 million in property tax in comparison to probably a bigger number than that, because that's something I didn't really get to see on here. Was just the property tax that is getting transferred over from one district to the other. Because, you know, there's only 40 students, but you mentioned there was 96 million in value of property tax.
okay,
Right.
so yeah, so 2 different things, I think. One, the criteria number 8 wants to ensure that the reason for the transfer wasn't an increase in property values. So that you are not doing this so that a property, so that you can increase the value of a property. And in this case, it's already within the city of Loma Linda limits. And so there likely wouldn't be a change in property values. So the 96 million that I mentioned is the assessed value of the land within that area. And so that land, when it moves over, the assessed value is going to move from one district to another. That's not money that's changing hands.
So what's a property tax value then? Like, how much is it going to be transferred from Colton Unified to Redlands Unified? And I'm talking about the revenue that the school district gets from property taxes.
Oh, that is not something we looked at. There are tax rolls. The school district gets, you know, some small percentage of that property value. As you know, in California, we are assessed as property owners. Initially, it's 1% of the value of the property, and then it goes up 2% every year. And then a school district, along with, you know, fire department, and other special districts, your water district, et cetera, all get some percentage of that value. But we didn't look at the property records to see if it's.
Because that would go under number 9, which is the effect on fiscal status and management. And you basically said you're substantially met. That's why I had questions about it, is when you guys started talking about the value of the actual property tax.
It wouldn't affect number 9 because school districts are funded, as Matt noted, based on the local control funding formula. And that's a formula that the state puts together to determine how much the funding is going to be. Some portion of that is property taxes. But so the state, for example, if the district is supposed to get $1 million, and the district right now is generating $300,000 in property taxes, the state is making up that difference. And so right now, neither of these school districts are receiving sufficient number of property taxes to be above what the state would be providing. And so the amount that's coming over really just turns out to be a wash for the state.
Okay. That's not how cities work, so thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, the cities are based strictly there. And if it was what we call a basic aid district, there are districts in California that receive more in property values, or excuse me, in property taxes than they would receive from the state. And in that case, this would be something to look at and be concerned with, but neither of these districts are anywhere near that level where the transfer of the property taxes would impact the amount of funding that they're going to receive.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions? So we'll move on to, and is there any questions from the public on this? Audrey? Well, seeing none, we'll move over to number 7, which is the public hearing on the City of Loma Linda Territory Transfer Petition. So I will give this over to our secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would just go over, since some of the people attending are doing so by phone, I'll go ahead and read the abstract that accompanies the agenda item, which is a public hearing on the City of Loma Linda Territory Transfer Petition. The City of Loma Linda is the chief petitioner. The City of Loma Linda Resolution 3082 states in part that the Loma Linda City Council supports the proposition that all residents of Loma Linda be part of the Redlands Unified School District. The current Redlands Unified School District and Colton Joint Unified School District boundaries bisect the City of Loma Linda. City of Loma Linda Resolution 3082 requests a change of boundaries to transfer the Laurel Heights neighborhood and any other areas within the within the incorporated city limits of the City of Loma Linda from Colton Joint Unified School District to the Redlands Unified School District. The area affected by the proposed territory transfer from Colton Joint Unified School District to Redlands Unified School District is approximately 175 acres. The purpose of this preliminary hearing is to receive comments and for the county committee to either grant or deny the petition. If the petition is denied, it goes no further. If the petition is granted, the process moves forward and the county committee must adopt a tentative recommendation and hold one or more additional public hearings in the area proposed for transfer before taking final action on the petition. So the action is before the committee is item 8, either to grant or deny. The other, if the committee grants it, then some of the other things that are mentioned in terms of additional public hearings and whatnot, those would be done in future meetings. So with that, Mr. Chairman, you can proceed to item 7.1 and open the public hearing.
At this time, we're opening a public hearing to receive public comments. Audrey, is there anyone here to speak?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we have it organized, and let me first note that the public hearing is opened at 7:25. So that we will give the petitioner the opportunity to speak. We will give each school district in item 7.3, 15 minutes each to speak. And so we do have 2 representatives from the City of Loma Linda. We have the mayor and I think Council Member Jindal is going to speak first. Correct me if I'm wrong, but go ahead. You have 15 minutes for your presentation.
Great, Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'll go ahead first, and it's going to take a few minutes, and then you can say any words that you have. I'll take that as a yes. All right. All right, well, hello again, members of the San Bernardino County Committee on School District Organization. Thanks for having us here again. Thanks a lot to Brianna, Matt, and Scott for their work. I'm sure it wasn't easy. We started this months ago, and I know it's taken a while to get all this data together and make it easy to digest. The last time we were here, I presented the history of how this issue arose. The boundaries of these districts were created decades prior, when the location was vacant and there was no residential housing. The residents that now live in this area started this process 2 years ago in December of 2020. When it came to the city council, we had a signed petition of over 90% of the households in this area, with a list of reasons why they supported and why they wanted for this district reorganization. You heard from about a dozen speakers last time we had this meeting too, and they gave a whole bunch of reasons of why they wanted this to happen. Needless to say, there was a lot of wide support for this motion. I remember that there were two arguments last time. One was the bond, and the second was diversity. And I remember saying that, you know, if there is a major risk for all of Colton Unified School District, then I understand. We have to look at after our whole constituency when making these decisions. And if there was a major unmitigable impact, then, you know, it makes sense. Going through this presentation, it looks like the change will have a decrease of 0.1%, and isn't going to promote any particular ethnic makeup in either of the school districts. And while I heard that there are some unresolved issues, I also hear that there are potential solutions that we can take for each one of these, and there are further discussions to be had on which solution is the best for both districts. So we're not hurting one and not overly benefiting another. I would ask that the committee considers the asks of one that is a majority of the population. If there is no material impact, I have to side with my constituents in the Laurel Heights community and ask that we establish continuity throughout the entire city. This is a problem that none of us have created. It was done maybe in the 70s or even before, but it is an opportunity for us to rectify it for the generations to come. It sounds that there are reservations because it's a process that isn't done often and hasn't been done in this area before. My request is that this not be stalled because it's complicated, but that it be allowed to go through because a vast majority of our residents have asked for it. And there are solutions to some of the challenges that are arising when this redistrict would happen. We would love to be a part of these talks if we can be of any help as a city. And I just want to reiterate that a majority of the population has supported this, and if there is no major impact that is happening on either one of the districts, that we want to support this as a city and make sure that the voices of the community are heard. Once again, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you taking the time to hear from our residents and having conducted this study. I'll go ahead and give some time to my mayor if he has any comments that he would like to make. I see the mayor got off mute.
Okay, yeah.
We're standing by for you.
Phil, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. You might be on mute from your phone.
Is it possible to turn on his mic from your system?
I'll look and see if I have that. I lost them in the list. Let me scroll again.
I just sent him a message. He's trying to speak, but there's something going on, so he's calling in right now.
Okay. Okay, I see him on the list and I don't see that he is muted. Mayor Drupper, are you able to speak?
He'll be calling in. The phone number should be ending with 9505.
Okay. Okay, I'm admitting.
Can you hear me?
I think we're getting an echo.
Okay, how about now?
Good.
Can
Go
you hear
ahead.
me? Can you hear me now? Okay, boy, that was really weird because everything says my stuff is turned on and I was trying to talk and I couldn't. So sorry about that. I just want to thank Councilmember Jindal. That was well stated, very eloquent as far as our position. Thank you very much for laying the groundwork on that. Just some comments based on some notes I was making as I was listening to the committee. First off, I want to say that the city of Loma Linda has phenomenal relationships with both the city of Redlands, the city of Colton, and both school districts. The Redlands School District and the Colton School District, we have nothing but respect and admiration for both. This was generated, like Councilmember Jindal said, from our residents, and we are very attentive to what our residents want. And it was not a simple couple of people. I mean, we had quite an overwhelming resolve from the area affected here. That was really pushing very hard on the city initially because that's where they thought this was controlled. So I will tell you this, I hope from listening to everything, it sounds like there's two options. The committee could move this forward, and then there's still a lot of different things that have to be worked out, subsequent hearings and things that have to be figured out. But the committee could also stop it at this point, which wouldn't allow us to explore some of those other options. So I really hope that the committee would be willing to move this forward so we can get to those points and explore what needs to be done. But I will tell you that I believe that the residents of this part of our community, whatever their options are moving forward, they've made it very clear to us that they would take steps towards either litigation or approaching the state legislature for some resolution, because that's what they're looking for, and they're very passionate about it. As far as the ethnicity of the students in that area, I can tell you the city of Loma Linda is extremely diverse. And what I found interesting was talking about the number of students was, I believe, 42, but I can't remember exactly. I didn't catch it. I was trying to write my notes down, but many of those are already through inter-district transfers already attending Redlands School District. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm not sure, because that was actually brought up a while back when we started this process, that, well, there's already an avenue for folks to send their kids to a different school district if they want. However, this part of our city really feels left out of the community. And this is really about equity and inclusion. And that cannot be overstated. Although we've said it, this line arbitrarily bisects the community, it's important for you to understand that it bisects about 10% of the community, if not less. A vast majority of the city is considered or is in the Redlands School District, but it feels like a whole piece. And this group, this side, this small piece of the city feels almost like they're not part of the community. And so for us, this is very much about equity and inclusion. As far as the 9 criteria, your consultant, and I appreciate their report, has laid out that all 9 of the criteria have been substantially met. We talked about some options for the CFD. And again, I believe by moving this forward, we could get to some of those further discussions on how that would look. From the way I understood how it was presented is potentially this could still run into hurdles and stop at some point down the road. But if you stop it here tonight, that doesn't even give us a chance to explore those options. I think that's about it from my notes. Again, I want to thank Mr. Jindal for working very hard on this. But as far as the entire city council, this was a unanimous petition and resolution. And so the city stands behind our residents in this particular part of the community. And we look forward to seeing how this plays out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That takes us to 7.3, presentations by affected school districts. You have 15 minutes each. Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, we have an individual representing Colton Joint Unified. It's the superintendent, Frank Miranda, and representing Redlands Unified School District, we have Assistant Superintendent Jason Hill. So we'll, absent other direction from the committee, we'll go in alphabetical order and start with Colton.
All right, sounds good. Good evening, members of the San Bernardino County Committee on School District Organization, Dr. Dennis Mobley, County Superintendent Ted Alejandre, and the community members. My name is, as Dennis said, I'm Dr. Frank Miranda. I'm the proud superintendent of the Colton Joint Unified School District. And I really appreciate you thinking and thank you for providing me this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Colton Joint Unified School District and on behalf of our Board of Education. Our board and district are extremely proud of our educational programs and the student achievement in our district. Obviously, as comments were made this evening, definitely concerned that there is a community that is part of our district that and families who feel disenfranchised from our district and what our district has to offer. So I know that they've been pursuing this transfer for a while in this neighboring district there in Loma Linda, Laurel Heights. So as noted before in previous comments I've made, residents have the option to apply for inter-district transfers and they can get a permit to attend the schools in Redlands. And many have chosen to do so. I believe we have 14 right now. But the petition has made us aware of something as superintendent of schools and our Board of Education, some discontent within a neighborhood that feels haven't really been provided the opportunity. So we would love the opportunity to sit down with the community and listen and problem solve with this community, the Laurel Heights neighborhood, definitely as an alternative to the moving forward with this territory transfer. So having said that, this afternoon, I submitted a letter to the county committee expressing our continued concerns with both the process followed in this matter, as well as the conclusions that the school service feasibility study reached regarding the territory transfer. My comments tonight will largely reflect some points made in the letter. I know it was submitted a little late here this evening, so I encourage all of the committee members to read that letter because it goes into a little bit more detail than I will be providing my comments. So there is a belief, though, that the city residents have, and I can understand that all the residents should live within a single school district. But that's really not a compelling reason to do a transfer. The municipal boundary alignment with school district boundaries is not an organizing principle of school districts. We serve portions of 7 cities, and Redlands serves 6. If every city sought to be served by a single school district, our district and Redlands Unified, and most districts in San Bernardino County will look radically different than they do today. And some would not even exist. That would set a dangerous precedent in our opinion. So with that, we've performed, and I'll say an initial review of the study itself that we received several days ago, I think about 3 days ago. And as we look at the study and absorb the findings, as an initial conclusion, and as noted earlier by many of the members of the committee, we have serious concerns with criteria number 3. And so the council for the county has even noted and concluded that the CFD territory cannot be transferred and the lien on the property for the collection of the special taxes cannot be seized. Well, I'll say this, the legal memorandum offers several ideas, and I'll say innovative, to address the potential taxpayers or the impacts of the issue. They are more than ideas at this point. Suggestions, ideas, recommendations, and as noted, not even tested. Every option has an issue, a contingency, a caveat, or a condition over which our district has no control and which cannot be pursued with legal certainty or without exposing our district to some potential legal liability, as noted by one of the members, and to our bondholders, and our taxpayers. Thus, there's no rational basis on which to really conclude that this criteria has been substantially met based on the speculative ideas described in the memorandum. Respectfully, I say this, and I say this again respectfully, we feel that the study is incorrect in concluding the criteria has not been met. Let me add that also in terms of the evaluation of 96 million, that has an impact on future bonds for our district and the debt, overall debt, when we look for bonds in the future. So there is an impact, and I think also so that when it relates to criteria number 9, I think there is an issue there. So I think if all the criteria has not been met, the petition may not be granted. Further, if the criteria, even if the criteria are met, the county committee should not grant the petition in the absence of a compelling reason to entertain it. Lest the committee desire to open the floodgates on territory transfers. Again, we service 7 cities, not just a couple. So just as a reminder, the granting of the territory transfer petition is discretionary and not mandatory. CDE has made it very clear that the criteria set a minimum standards that must be met to be granted, but the county committee is not required to grant a petition just because those criteria have been met. And of course, we've stated that we don't feel like criteria number 7 was met. So CDE also further advises that given when the criteria are met, territory transfers should not be granted in the absence of compelling circumstances. And that's from the statute. So petitions to transfer small areas of territory will often easily meet the criteria of the education code. Yet the cumulative impact of successive territory transfers over time would decimate school boundaries and school districts. This precedent should not be set for our district or any school district in San Bernardino County. So again, I want to conclude here and just say that, CJSD, I heard the word equity, and we have an equity vision. We want all our students to be successful. We want all the students to achieve. We want all the students to treat it equitably and then also have success. And we take that very serious. That's part of our vision. So again, we're sympathetic. I say this, we really are, to the community, to their concerns. I've talked to my board members even today and said, we're willing to sit down with the community, with the leadership, with the mayor, with the city council, and find out what other things we can do to better service that community that seems to be disenfranchised at this point. We strongly urge the county committee to deny the petition at the conclusion of the preliminary hearing this evening and take no further action. And give our district an opportunity to work directly with the city and the Laurel Heights neighborhood to address their concerns. So with that, those are my comments.
And
Thank you so much. I'd like to ask if Redlands Unified School District has a speaker.
yes.
Yes,
Mr.
I'm Jason Hill, the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services for Redlands Unified.
You can begin.
All right, well, thank you, Chairman Trillo, County Committee members, and Ted Alejandra and Frank Miranda. The Redlands Unified School District has reviewed all 9 criteria outlined in the study. We thank school services in providing this data. Our only really remaining questions are the division of the CFD. As you may know, there's some significant fees and resources used to create and manage those CFDs. And with some uncertainty with this specific scenario, it leaves us with a lot of significant questions we'd have to explore. That's all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a clarifying statement.
Yes.
At the beginning of the meeting, I acknowledged that we did receive the letter from Colton. I wasn't sure how it was going to be presented to the committee. It has, we can distribute it after the meeting to the members of the committee, to the city representatives for Loma Linda and Redlands. The letter is a letter of opposition. The first item is the procedural errors and timeline. They address a concern there. Number 2 is study conclusions and financial impacts. Number 3, no compelling educational reasons for the transfer. But we will also post this to our website, but we will need to do that tomorrow. But we do want to make it publicly available to all parties involved and to the public.
Thank you. So that takes us to 7.4 public comments.
And I believe this is where we have callers who have maybe online. So I'm going to ask a caller with the phone number ending in 9505 if you would hit *6 to unmute, and you have 3 minutes to make a public comment. Okay, I was looking at, I believe it was caller in with the number ending in 9505. If you would unmute.
Dennis, I believe that was the Loma Linda mayor.
Oh, I'm okay. I'm only looking at phone numbers, so I apologize for that. So then we have another caller ending in 4000. If you would hit *6 to unmute. Please identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is Jeanette Lewis. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for allowing us to speak. I am actually part of the Laurel Heights community. I apologize, I was not on the call at the very beginning due to work obligations. So I've been part of this since 2020. I've lived in the community since it was established. And part of my concern, what I heard a lot about today is, I normally would never bring up ethnicity as a reason for for this, but I noticed it was brought up as far as the school district, but we did not talk about the children. So unfortunately, there was not a link provided, so we could not see some of the presentation, but on my own, I researched, and I want to say online, forgive me if this is wrong, but online, I believe 75% of the children in Colton are Hispanic. And what about the children that don't feel like there's other kids like them at their school? So in my community, there's a high population of Asians, and I'm part Chinese as well. So how many Asian people do you have? How many Asian kids are in your school district? there's not, and there's also a lot of children that are Seventh-day Adventist. So it's very challenging to send a child to a school when they don't either see people like them, or also the other children aren't of the same religion. And I understand this is a public school district, not a private, but it extends into their after school and their extracurricular activities. Seventh-day Adventists don't believe in playing baseball and sports and things like that on Sabbath. Most everything in certain communities is done on Saturday. And so this is what our mayor was talking about as far as children not really feeling included. And when you move from one side of the city to another, all of a sudden your child is no longer able to go to school with children that are like them or have the same religion as they do. And it's a problem because then their friends at school and their friends outside of school have to be completely separate. And again, I would have never brought that up except for the comments that I heard about looking at the school districts as you know, do we have enough of a certain ethnicity at our school district? To me, that was definitely not something that we should be looking at, but that came to mind. And I think also for me, it's just if we live in Loma Linda, how far is it to the Colton school? You know, I would never send my child on a bus. So then I'm having to drive to Colton in order to drop off my child. And I work in Loma Linda, live in Loma Linda, and yet I can't send my child to a school that's near me, which doesn't make any sense. So I think there's a lot of different reasons. We do feel like we are left out. We're on the outskirts of Loma Linda, it seems like, and we're like the stepchildren. So I understand you have bonds to pay, but again, the amount is negligible, and we should not have to be basically held accountable for Colton's debt, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we go to our next caller, I would just mention that both the feasibility study and the PowerPoint slide deck for the presentations were posted to the website, and that's the same location that the agenda was announced at the beginning of the meeting. So the next caller I see is the last four digits of the phone number is 8660. Would you press *6 to unmute and identify yourself, please? Caller with the phone number ending in 8660. Please press *6 to unmute and identify yourself. Okay. Not sure if that person is on the line anymore. The next number that I see, last four digits end in 4726. Would you press *6 to unmute and identify yourself? Again, the number ending in 4726. Press *6 to unmute. The only other caller on the line is also, I believe, was identified as the mayor, but Mr. Chairman, I believe we have reached the end of the public comments by phone that I can determine.
So at this time, we're moving to 7.5, summary closing statements by petitioners, school districts, public proponents, and opponents, up to 3 minutes each with 12 minutes total. So at this time, we'd give the petitioner 3 minutes to close.
All righty. Thank you once again. I attended Colton schools and I was a Ritchie Canyon Elementary Coyote myself. My aim and our aim is not to put Colton Unified in a tough position at all. However, I don't believe it's our right to judge whether the residents' reasons, passionate reasons of the community are sufficient for us as policymakers or not. This is a conviction that they hold and they hold very strongly. Last words, I think I would ask that CFDs has come up quite a bit. We know there is one major bond that is really at the top of everyone's mind. It was mentioned that this process is going to take a few years, regardless of what we do. If there is an end date of 2032, we can perhaps look at setting an appropriate timeline where the issue of CFDs is either reduced or it's not even as much of a concern as it is right now. That might be a possible bridge that we can take to ensure that, you know, the residents' concerns are being met and Colton Unified and Redlands Unified aren't being affected. Along with that, I think, again, this is something that's really passionate for the community. They have their own reasons. I think there were a list of 6 to 7 different reasons. You heard 2 or 3 of them tonight from community members. You heard a few last time around. There was a concern that, you know, there might be more neighborhoods that start this process. This is the first time this process has been done. I don't think there's too many neighborhoods that are having the issues that this neighborhood is having. So we're just asking that we take whatever steps, again, as policymakers that we can to help rectify this issue and have continuity within the city itself. Really appreciate the feedback from the superintendent for Colton. You know, whatever path we go, I hope that residents of any neighborhood are given the attention that they deserve. And especially in Laurel Heights, whether it's in Colton or whether it's in Redlands, that, you know, they deserve, the students and the residents themselves get the attention that they need. Final thing, we mentioned that some students are already in Redlands and there's a process that Colton students can go to Redlands. If the residents were to take that option, Redlands should probably be the one that is getting the financial benefits, or if there are any, for that move. The taxpayer money should stay with Redlands, even if it is negligible. So I don't want to go back to my residents and say, hey, you know, there's a process that already exists. Just send your students to Redlands if you really have a strong position on it. Because I know that question is going to come up about, hey, why are our taxes going one location when we're using the resources of another? How much ever, you know, that affects the school districts or not is not the question. It's the visibility of the residents and taxpayers themselves.
Thank you so much.
Great, and thanks once again, Chairman Trujillo, for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. At this time, we're going with the school district. So we're going with Dr. Frank Miranda for his 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. And just in closing, I'll say again that we really value the city of Loma Linda, the Laurel Heights community neighborhood, and our partners in education, Redlands Unified School District. We have a lot of great friends over there. And we're partners in education, in health and the well-being of our communities. That said, our board has a strong interest in maintaining the integrity of its boundaries and the quality of its educational programs. The petition has given us and provided us a lot of important information about our local community concerns. And our district stands ready to engage in honest, constructive dialogue and problem solving with the residents of Loma Linda. However, tonight, nothing we have heard this evening negates the very real negative impact that this petition has or would have on Colton Joint Unified, on our district and its students. Territory transfers are appropriate only in compelling circumstances, which really are not present here. Residents who wish to attend, as stated in Redlands, always have the option of applying for inter-district permit. And if they're able to meet the requirements, that we would expect that this option to continue, we expect this option to continue in the future. So I'll end with this, that the vision of the Colton Shore Unified School District is compelling. It's students first, all students. It's about student achievement, equity for all students, and their success. That's what we're all about. That's what we're going to continue to do to serve all our communities. So I want to thank again all of you for your time, committee, and again just because of the questions and raised tonight, that you do not move the petition forward. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll provide Jason Hill, from the Assistant Superintendent of Redlands Unified School District, for his 3 minutes.
All right, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to close just with a thank you to the committee, to the city of Loma Linda and our partners in Colton Unified. We remain committed to our students and their communities. We'll continue to work with everyone on this process, whichever direction we go.
And if there is a public proponent that'd like to speak for 3 minutes to close their argument.
Well, I can identify, I believe the mayor's phone is still active, ending in 9505. Either *6 to unmute, or I don't know if you're also on the Zoom link.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, just one more final pitch to just ask that we be allowed to continue the process and the discussion moving forward. As stated many times, there's several more steps that would have to happen, more meetings, more hearings that would have to occur, and we ask that be allowed to play out before instead of shutting this down here at this level. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, we still have a guest with the number ending in 4000. I believe the individual spoke as a proponent. We still have maybe a minute left for closing, if that person wishes to speak. *6 to unmute, although it appears to be active.
But I would just like to say one thing in regards to a comment that was made by Colton Unified School District. So living in Loma Linda, if I live on one side of Loma Linda, I need to go through the hassle and the paperwork of an inter-district transfer. But if I live on the other side of Loma Linda, I don't have to. Does that make any sense? Why am I being penalized when I live in the same zip code and the same city, but because I chose to live in a house, when I purchased a house that happened to be under Colton Unified School District? That does not really seem like a fair process. I understand the inter-district transfer process, and it's time consuming, and it's not a one-time thing. That is something that you have to do continually. So while you see that as a solution, I definitely don't believe residents see it as as something that they should have to do when they live in a city that 90%, as our mayor said, have easy access to Redlands Unified School District. Thank you.
At this time, is there any opponents from the public? Seeing none, then we'll proceed on to 7.6.
Mr. Chairman, I would think that if we could close the hearing at 8:06.
8:06. Do you need a motion?
No, just.
Okay. So that takes us to agenda item 8, which is action to grant or deny the City of Loma Linda territory transfer petition. So I'll turn it over to you. That's okay.
Well, I think there's been sufficient discussion about what the motion is before the committee. So I believe you would be ready to accept a motion. And then the maker of the motion should read in either grants or denies.
Great. So I'm accepting a motion on the floor from our committee members.
I move that we grant their petition or.
So we have a motion from Brenda Cadman. Do we have a second? Without a second, that motion dies. Do I have any other motions on the floor? Does anyone else have a motion on the floor from the county committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Kareem. I'll move to deny the petition.
I second. Martinez.
So we have a motion to deny the petition from Kareem Gagora and a second from Flora Martinez.
So is it time for comments now?
Yes, at this time we can talk.
Okay,
This is
so
the motion,
first,
please.
I would like to comment by thanking Mr. Jindal. I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly, for your being an elected official that understands the role of an elected official. I appreciate that the people in your area have been able to come to you as a city council and to have their voices heard. I think that is so important. I appreciate that you heard their voices and that the entire city council thought this was important enough that it was a unanimous resolution. I see that, and I recognize that as being a really good thing for the people. We elect people to represent us, and we want to be heard from them. So just thank you for your service and understanding what your role is. Also, I think it is really premature to stop this process. We know that there's a lot of questions that need to be had, but the process should go forward. You should not make long-term decisions based on short-term consequences. Those short-term consequences at this time might be like, this is too difficult, it's too hard, or whatever your personal reason is to think it's too difficult. I don't think that it's too difficult to explore more for those 44 families or 44 students. I guess there's probably less than 44 families. It's not too hard to say, let's look at it more. And I think that if we're in the business of educating children, you're educating the whole child. So you can't say there's no educational reason. If you're looking at the whole child, then you're looking at all the reasons that these parents are seeing and saying, and I do think it's a little rude to say their reasons aren't good enough. They've met all the criteria. All 9 criterias have been substantially met. And if you disagree with that, then maybe at the next step, after we explore more, we can find out if maybe there's a reason to stop. And I'm not saying necessarily that like I see that this going through, but I'm saying it should have the chance to be explored more. Right now, there's good relationships in the cities. There's good relationships in the school districts. There's no reason why we can't explore more to see if there's a good solution. Even Mr. Jindal offered another solution of, there's 10 more years. But why kick the can down 10 more years and say, oh, in 10 more years, then we'll look at it. If we can like look at it now and plan for the future, again, remembering that you don't make these long-term decisions based on the short-term work that it's going to take to get there. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. That's my opinion.
Any other comments on the floor from the county committee members?
And that's one of the things that I think that it was discussed. This issue can come back in 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, when there's more clarification and maybe the CFD, the number 3 criterion is more adequately addressed. And in that meantime, maybe Dr. Miranda and Dr. Hill, and they can come up with a solution to address the needs of that community. Thank you for everyone. Very emotional, but this very important issue and time. Yes.
Thank you so much, Robert Bennett. Any other comments from the floor?
Yes, Mr. Chair, since I made the motion, I do want to clarify, there's still too many uncertainties. And so I agree with my committee member, Mr. Bennett, that more time is needed. And so this isn't something to kind of dismiss the advocacy from the residents or the great representation from the city of Loma Linda. I have a high value and respect for the mayor and Councilmember Jindal. I just think at this time, in my belief, there's too many uncertainties. And so I'm going to definitely move to deny. But want to thank everyone for participation and for their feedback in regards to this process. And those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Oh, we have some more comments. So we have committee member Flora Martinez.
Yes, hi. I'm sorry, I tried to speak and I got kicked out, so I'm back on. But anyway, I do want to thank everybody, and I agree with my colleague Kareem and Mr. Bennett, because I do think that there are other things that we didn't explore. I would like to see, you know, Colton and work collaboratively. I don't think that's been given an opportunity to see what kind of consensus they've come up with to moving forward. And if there's an impasse on what's going on, then we can go ahead and, you know, be that mediator or be that the decision maker. But for this to move on. So anyway, so I just wanted to clarify. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you so much. Any other comments? On my end, I guess I can speak, On my end, I felt that it gets really complicated when you have these proposals and you don't have the school district that is being affected on board. They provide a lot of investments in planning for the students in their future. And the questions about the finances for me kind of are still there, not just on the school bond, but even on kind of the future finances that that's going to have some effect on the school district. But my other kind of concern was the fact that Colton Joint Unified School District feels that there's a lot of impacts that it'll have financially from this transaction. And it seems like there has to be some type of middle ground here in terms of this proposal. So I'm hoping to maybe get more answers in the future as we explore the CFDs, as we kind of figure out how impacted school districts are able to kind of recover from even proposals like this one that would take 44 students away, but also have some property value that's also being transferred out. So those are all very important concerns that I feel need to really be addressed when we talk about these proposals. But and is there anyone else on the floor that wants to say something before we close? So at this time, we're gonna start with the roll call. Secretary?
Chairman, just to confirm, I have a motion to deny by member Gongora with a second by Martinez. We have, I don't know if member Willingham is still on the line or not. I know that he had to leave for a brief time, but I don't see him listed. And just to clarify, it takes the majority of the quorum to pass the motion. So with that, I'll do the roll call. Member Cadman.
No.
Member Bennett.
Aye.
Member Munoz.
Aye.
Member Martinez.
Aye, sorry.
There we go. I'll ask again, member Willingham. I believe he has left the meeting. Member Lopez.
Aye.
Member Chairman Trujillo.
Aye.
And member Gongora.
Aye.
Okay, so we have 6 ayes and 1 no. The motion carries to deny the petition.
So that takes us to number 9, other business.
Before I forget, I want to thank Angel Arrington. She posted the letter from Colton, just for your information. That's been posted to the chat box. We will follow up and make that part of the record available to the public, and I will email it after the meeting to members of the county committee. And actually, for any other announcements, I'd like to turn it over to our county superintendent. Ted, do you have any comments or announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Mobley. Just want to thank the county committee for all your work and efforts. As you know, we've talked about this before. When there is action that's needed by the county committee, it's so important to have your service. And so we really thank you for that service. And I want to thank both Loma Linda, Redlands, Colton, and our residents for participating tonight in this very important issue. So thank you again, Mr. Mobley, and thank you all for being here this evening.
And I too want to thank all of the parties involved. I had the opportunity to work with both the city, both school districts on this issue, also with school services, Brianna and Matt, and also Scott Ferguson. Thank you for the work that you have done. As far as correspondence, earlier today, we received a notice from LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission. It's a courtesy notice. There's no action to be taken. It's just, but we provide them with our public hearings. They provide us with their public hearings. So they have a matter coming up in the Fontana area. And so that's just for your information. County Council is on the line. I don't know if you have any comments or announcements regarding the process this evening.
There are no comments from County Council. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And that concludes other business.
Great. So number 10 is special meeting is set up for 6 o'clock on Wednesday, December 14th, 2022. And the next regular meeting, if necessary, will be at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, December 21st, 2022.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
On item 10, the purpose of the special meeting is to renew the AB 361 virtual meeting process that the committee can use. And that authorization will expire at the end of February, although the action that the committee will consider on the 14th will be valid for just 30 days.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Question. Sorry, I probably should have gone earlier. Dennis, is there any way the county schools could quarterback something for these residents? Try to help find a solution.
We could look at an authorization, but
No. I'll think it over.
Yeah.
So again, the next regular meeting, if necessary, is 6 p.m. Wednesday, December 21st, 2022. At this time, we have adjournment. And want to say thank you all for being here. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much. I
Thanks,
know that
everyone.
adjourned at 8:21.
8:21. There you go.
Have a good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you all.
And if I
Bye.
don't see you, happy holidays for everyone. Be safe. Thank you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to all.
Thanks all.